it is stupid how long Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been in development for. And I did a little retrospective on its development history so far. And this video right here, titled Beyond Good and Evil 2 Still in Early Development After 15 Years, shatters Duke Nukem Forever's record for longest game in development. This is at least according to Insider Gaming. Their sources relayed that Beyond Good and Evil 2, even in November of 2022, is still in early development, despite it having been over a decade since the game's announcement. We've been hearing news about this game since all the way back in 2008 when Mitchell Ansel, the creator of Beyond Good and Evil, confirmed that this game was in development, but there'd be trouble in paradise for the foreseeable future. We get a lot of whiplash, a lot of back and forth on whether this game is coming out or not. In 2009, Beyond Good and Evil 2 was reportedly on hold, and then in 2010, turns out Beyond Good and Evil 2 is actually still in development. But then later on, there was a rumor that Mitchell Ansel might be leaving Ubisoft Montpellier and that Beyond Good and Evil 2's future may be in doubt. But then later in 2010, Ubisoft said, you know, we were just taking our time with Beyond Good and Evil 2. It has to be perfect. And then in 2012, Ubisoft insisted that Beyond Good and Evil 2 was still an active creation. Then later in 2014, Mitchell Ansel started a new studio but remained at Ubisoft, so it seemed hopeful that there was still a chance that Beyond Good and Evil 2 might come out. But then in 2015, things started to look grim for Beyond Good and Evil 2 as a journalist heard behind the scenes that the studio has moved on from Beyond Good and Evil 2, that the project has been abandoned in a big way. The key people from that studio that were making it moved on to other projects outside of Ubisoft. And then the following year in 2016, Ubisoft insisted that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still being worked on by Mitchell Ansel. This was according to Yves Guillemot, who is the CEO of Ubisoft. And later in 2016, we did get some teases from Mitchell Ansel suggesting that a Beyond Good and Evil 2 announcement or showcase was imminent. And then we got the official confirmation via a Facebook post where Ubisoft confirmed that Montpellier Studio was in fact working on Beyond Good and Evil 2, and that Mitchell Ansel is still involved. And then we finally got an official announcement trailer in E3 2017. That's when there was most hope that, okay, maybe this game has a chance of coming out after all. But then we heard that this is actually day zero of development, suggesting that this game's still very early in the works, suggesting it's going to be a number of years before this game comes out. But at least we had some kind of tangible footage, some kind of announcement, some kind of showcase that seemed to indicate that there were serious resources being poured into this project and that its development was well underway. We even got a bunch of development video blogs like this one from 5 years ago, from back in June of 2017, where we got Mitchell himself playing the game, showing us that, you know, this is a playable build. And we would get a bunch of these videos throughout the years. Here's one more from 2017. This right here is a cinematic trailer from 2018 where we got a first glimpse at Jade in the sequel. So even more hope that, okay, things are moving along. We even got more behind the scenes. This right here showed some of the performance capture, among other things like aspects of combat and ship maneuverability. This was in 2018. And would just see consistent update videos from the project. Here's another one from December of 2018 showing augments, vehicles, co-op, and spyglass. And then here we have a presentation from December of 2018 showing us a pre-alpha demo walkthrough. And even in 2019, we got this video right here back in October of 2019 highlighting character customization, Jade's history, and pirate concepts, so on and so forth. But then things would take a turn for the worse when it was announced in September of 2020 that Rayman and Beyond Good and Evil creator Mitchell Ansel is quitting video games to work on Wildlife Sanctuary. We would later learn that this likely had at least in part to do with the fact that he's been accused of abusive and disruptive practices when developing Beyond Good and Evil 2, which coincided with a lot of the abuse, toxicity, misconduct, harassment, and discrimination that was exposed from within Ubisoft. This once again generated concerns that Beyond Good and Evil 2 might not be coming out after all, but Ubisoft insisted in 2021 that the game is still in development. I've lost count the number of times they have insisted this, but even if it is in development, again, as of November of 2022, the game is still in early development, so it'll still be a number of years. That's assuming there's actually any hope for this project to be completed. A hope that is further diminished by this latest report from news outlet Kotaku. This is an article whose headline reads, Beyond Good and Evil 2 studio studio head no longer at Ubisoft Montpellier loses. So behind the scenes, it really doesn't feel like the development team has its shit together. Ubisoft Montpellier loses its managing director as Beyond Good and Evil 2 continues to struggle. It's not just ground floor workers leaving, but just people in position of leadership, people in key senior positions. Last week, staff at Ubisoft Montpellier were informed their managing director was no longer with the company. Kotaku has learned. It comes as the studio faces a labor investigation by local government authorities over an unprecedented number of developers experiencing burnout and going on sick leave. Not only do you have the work culture issues that Ubisoft has been contending with, but on top of that, I mean, working on this one project that has been in development for longer than Duke Nukem Forever by a significant margin, with no end in sight, with no light at the end of the tunnel, yeah, that's going to definitely lead to burning out because of the amount of time that they're working on something that seems to be going nowhere. Now, if you're hoping that the game has at least made some kind of progress in its development since we last heard back in November of 2022 that as of then, the game was still early in development, unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappoint you with this quote right here. Now with the game still not even technically in full production, it faces a personnel shakeup among its core team and an investigation by the Inspection du Travail in Montpellier, France, according to 3 sources. The game is not in full production to this day. It feels like the project is still at the starting line. While we have seen some gameplay footage, we have seen a build of the game. I mean, all of that might have been changed up or repurposed, and it's just we don't know what's going on, and it's clear that this game is in development hell, that there's just no vision or direction for it, or the development team is struggling to execute on maybe an overly ambitious vision. Hard to say for sure, but things are just moving so slowly right now. Now, Ubisoft spokesperson attempted to provide some reassurance, stating that the health and wellness of our teams is an ongoing priority. Given the length of the development cycle with Beyond Good and Evil 2, almost 16 years as of the publishing of this video, the Montpellier development team is undergoing well-being assessments through a third party for preventative measures and to evaluate where additional support may be needed. They seem to be implying that things are taking longer than we expected because we care about employees and we want to make sure that their health is the #1 priority. But I feel like the reason their health has deteriorated, aside from just less than ideal workplace conditions, is the fact that this Beyond Good and Evil 2 project has been so woefully mismanaged that, yeah, it's going to burn out anyone who's involved in a project like this that really seems like you're pouring a lot of heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears for nothing. Because this is such a directionless project right now that feels like it's just never going to come out. And if the developers for this game are pulling in long hours and crunching, if we're at that phase, even in this stage of the game's development, then yeah, it's just going to burn out developers that much more because they're not just crunching, they're also crunching for something that seems doomed to fail, doomed to never release. Kotaku then delves into specifics about who exactly left and what's going on with the leadership structure within this development studio. The studio told staff last week that managing director Guillaume Carmona, I probably butchered that, I'm just going to call him Carmona, who had previously been absent since the beginning of the year, would not be returning and had left the company. No reason was provided, citing legal confidentiality. Carmona, a nearly 2-decade veteran of Ubisoft who began in marketing, left its Paris office in 2019 to become head of the studio best known for creating Rayman. That's the Montpellier studio that's also in charge of Beyond Good and Evil 2. So this is a major senior developer and leadership departure amidst myriad other departures that are taking place at the same time. His departure comes after a year which saw dozens of developers at Montpellier going out on extended leave for stress or sickness, including many leads, according to 3 sources. People who are there to steer the ship of their departments, those kinds of people are leaving in droves, which cannot possibly pave the road for a smooth development cycle. And the people who left out of stress or sickness, for many this wasn't a temporary thing. Some came back while others eventually left the studio altogether, eventually sparking a visit from the French Labor Inspection Office last December. The rate at which people be taking extended leave for stress or sickness is so high that it's drawn the suspicion of local government officials who are like, okay, we gotta investigate this. There's something very off about the way this company's running. If this is the rate of turnover or extended leave that we're seeing. There's clearly something unhealthy going on behind the scenes, is their assumption. So yeah, they're gonna be inspecting Ubisoft and seeing how this machine is run. A third-party entity has now been tasked with interviewing employees at Montpellier and providing a full report on the health and well-being of the teams. Very interested to hear what the outcome of that is. Should be very interesting to see what the outcome of this is. I cannot imagine that many employees have a lot of good things to say about the way leadership has managed the working conditions at Ubisoft. Kotaku then closes the article off by further detailing the kind of turnover we're seeing within Ubisoft Montpellier, the key development members who have left, who were replaced, and whatnot, highlighting that the recent departure of the studio head coincides with Beyond Good and Evil 2's most recent shift in direction, which, among other changes, saw senior creative director Jean-Marc Jeffrey removed from the project. Kotaku understands that he has been replaced by Emile Morel, previously the game's associate director. Charles Gaudron, meanwhile, has become the new game director following the departure of Benjamin Dumas. Guillaume Brunier remains the game's executive producer, though some wonder if he will eventually be replaced as well. So yeah, not only does it feel like Beyond Good and Evil 2 is nowhere close to launching, and hell, not even anywhere close to really getting off the ground, but it also feels like the development studio's house isn't in order, and they're kind of working on that right now. It feels like they're still building the development team, and there are constant major shifts happening, either because people are quitting or leaving, or because they feel like they have to replace certain leaders. And this just feels like a never-ending cycle of mismanagement. Beyond Good and Evil 2, I hope it comes out one day, but at this point I'm wondering, is it not better to just cancel it, put it on ice for a bit, and then bring it back when it feels like there's a cohesive vision behind it with a management team that can handle the ambition and scope of the project, or until workers don't feel so mentally and physically stressed that they're constantly taking extended leave or just outright leaving Ubisoft to pursue greener pastures because they're not happy with their employment conditions. And with the original creator Mitchell Ansel no longer involved as the game's director after he ended up resigning in 2020 amid a larger reckoning with workplace abuse at Ubisoft, one has to wonder whether Beyond Good and Evil 2 will even feel like Beyond Good and Evil. This project has changed hands so many times that I fear for the project's ability to be something cohesive instead of a mishmash of a bunch of ideas that are kind of taped together. But even those questions feel like I'm getting ahead of myself because, one has to wonder whether this team can pull it together, whether they can even find the right people and retain the developers and employees and leads and department heads, and retain them long enough to be able to create a cohesive development environment where Beyond Good and Evil 2 can actually get made and can actually make any kind of progress that gives us hope that this game won't be stuck in early development for the foreseeable future. It's hard to say at this point. I'll be honest, I've given up all hope that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is ever coming out. I hope Ubisoft proves me wrong, and I hope that when they, re-announce Beyond Good and Evil 2 for like the third time now, that what they show us is impressive and that I'm able to get a spark of hope again. But right now, I'm just so worn out by Beyond Good and Evil 2. All the hype surrounding it has died down. It really doesn't feel like this game is going to come out in a good state unless they completely start from the ground up again. I don't know, we'll see what happens, but for now, all I'll say is just when I thought things couldn't get worse for Beyond Good and Evil 2's rather troubled development, they somehow do. They somehow do get worse, and this latest Kotaku article is only further indication that trouble surrounding this game's development will continue for quite some time. This is one of those game projects that, as much as I once upon a time anticipated, I wouldn't hold my breath out for anymore. You'll just run out of air and you'll just suffocate. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Beyond Good and Evil 2. Do you think there is hope that it'll launch one day and that it'll actually be a good game? Or are you sort of in my camp where I'm just like, I'm done with anything Beyond Good and Evil 2 related at this point? It just feels like this is a project that's going nowhere. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.